Well, I grew up in South LA, Crenshaw district, and during that time, we were a little unstable. We grew up during the aftermath of the war on drugs.
Effort against the mob. We need to take these people on. They are often connected to big drug cartels. They are not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators.
Fed by violence and nourished on rigid rules of respect, gangs both protect and terrify the few blocks they have staked out as their own.
Which ushered in the Rodney King era. So during that period, there was a short period where my family and we moved to Alabama. I was able to kind of get an idea of the differences from the city life to the South. The city life taught me that it's a lot slower, it's a lot quieter. You have a chance of having more discipline. I learned a lot of hard work. My family comes from a background of workers. And then in Los Angeles, it was more of a fast pace, very loud, very chaotic, a lot of drugs, a lot of gang banging, and then there was sports. Education wasn't really as important as surviving. The environment was very chaotic. So my mom, she chose to put us in school, and we were bused out to the Valley, where we went to school with predominantly white students. There was a polar opposite from that experience as well, given that, in our neighborhoods, there's a lot of, dysfunction. And then going into the white neighborhoods, you could kind of feel that they don't want you there. You were kind of pushed out, but they just so happened to let you go to the school, but they were upset about it. So all of those undertones came through. And I remember experiencing my first encounter with racism. A white student, I don't even remember what happened, what led to this situation, but I just remember her using the word nigger, and it was with so much pride. She just, felt good about that. And my initial reaction was to go to my backpack, grab a pencil, and charge at her. That's how frustrated the situation was. I had never heard the word before. I wasn't really taught much about, racism. But that experience changed a lot for me. So the way that they were handling the situation at my school, it was more so like the black kid gets in trouble, the white kid, they kind of just remove them from the class, don't really give them too many consequences. So I was really angry at that time. And also during my childhood, I experienced sexual abuse a lot. So that was also a challenging situation. So if you can imagine the anger compounding from racism to sexual abuse, it really changed the way I saw life, the way I thought, the way I showed up in everything. I played sports. Basketball was my favorite sport. And so I used that to channel all of those emotions. So instead of going out gangbanging and doing a whole bunch of drugs, basketball was my escape. But after a point, it became hard to escape because I'm still dealing with it, haven't really had any therapy or anything like that. So it was kind of tough to move past. So like in high school, I had a hard time just getting along with my coach because of the way he talked to me. And that was an easy trigger. And so I would get into it with him, so that anger would come back up. So it wasn't until college, my sophomore year, where I realized that I was struggling mentally. My freshman year and my sophomore year, I was drinking a lot just to try to mask all the frustration, all the feelings, and try to focus in on just doing what I need to do, basketball and sports. But it just all came crashing down, and it was really overwhelming. And I had a hard time filtering through it. So I made some decisions at that time to sit myself out, try to handle, my emotions and stuff like that, and then to try to play again. But I still had a hard time dealing with it. And I chose to study psychology to kind of explore what those issues were that I haven't been able to tap into. So I did that, and I had a professor who, she was a Black woman. She kind of mirrored my trauma, so I trusted her. Not to mention that it was a HBCU, so it made it more of a therapeutic process for me to learn what was going on within me. And I graduated with a bachelor's in psychology, and then I continued on to, get a master's in counseling, and that was another chance for me to explore myself a little deeper. And so that's where I ended up landing, and it still took me a while to even get to a point where I'm at now. I was in college at the time, Talladega College. It's a HBCU in Alabama, when I realized that I was really affected. At this time, college parties, you're able to kind of mask everything you're going through because this is so much fun and it's just always something to do. So you don't have to think about those things. But my decision making was very questionable at that time, from relationships to just how I acted in general, like getting into fights, things like that. Like it really, I couldn't control myself. When I got angry, I just got so angry to the point where I wanted to throw a bed over, like stupid stuff like that. And so came to a point where one night I think I was out drinking with some friends. I don't know why I started crying, but I was just crying. And I ended up in the middle of a road, just kneeling down, crying, not really realizing what's going on. And so at that time, I was going through my studies in psychology, and we were writing a lot of things out just from our past. So at that time, I just started to isolate and study more. And I started to find answers to the way my behaviors were. And it started to give me some relief, but then I began to run again. It was just so much going on, so much turmoil that I just wanted to leave. And it was close to graduation time. So at that time, I just, was like, okay, let me focus on, I'm not going to play basketball this year. I'm going to focus on graduating, doing my studies, and get out of here. Because I need to get back home, figure out what I'm going to do. And so at that time, I was just like, let me just keep focusing in on this. And then after I graduate, come back home to California, and then my grandfather gets sick, and he's on the verge of passing away. Started drinking again, ended up with a DUI. So that decision made me question everything about myself, like sitting in a jail cell. You have to question everything. Ooh. Need a moment. So, at that time, I had to really sit down, evaluate, and question, why was I drinking so much? What was going on? But even then, it was still tough to kind of pinpoint that. And I remember having a conversation after that with my mom and trying to figure out what my next step was going to be, because I kind of felt like just having that on your record kind of affects, you know, job applications, things like that. And it's like, what's the next step? And I decided to go back and get my master's in counseling. And during that process, more exploring, I was able to explore more. But I also realized that a lot of the education that we get is not tailored towards the Black experience. So I'm learning, but I have to flip it to mirror my situation. And I know that to others, the judgment is going to come from the white experience. So it's so much frustration through that process, but I felt like at the end of the day, if I don't do it, who's going to do it? And where would it start? Because it didn't seem like that experience was out there as far as education goes. So went through the process and I obtained my master's, and that's how I ended up semi in this place I'm at now. Oh, that was a lot. So it was last year when I decided that it was time for me to start to seek counseling. I watched my girlfriend go through her process and saw how she actually dealt with the things that of her trauma head on. When I saw that, I realized, like, yo, I'm harboring a lot of things that I need to get out. I need to speak on. I no longer need to hold this secret. 30-year secret was really tough. So that's when I started to engage in therapy. How it's working for me? It's teaching me how to become a whole person. I'm looking into the things that I've never really talked about. I am able to see how my experiences affect the way I was thinking. A lot of times my therapist will say, like, some of your thoughts are coming from a distorted place, thinking that right now in this moment you're still in the past and you kind of operate from that position. And so, like, challenging those thoughts, challenging my old thoughts and creating new thoughts for the present moment has been like a really big challenge, but it's also freeing. And, you know, just my accomplishments, the accomplishments that I have a hard time truthfully acknowledging came from a place of pain. So it was like I was kind of fighting my way out of it, if that makes sense. So I think I'm very grateful for the access to counseling, and I definitely think that for anybody who's been dealing with anything that they haven't spoke on, or even if they did, just consistently talking about it and working through it, it can change your life simply, and maybe change a lot more.
This is where these winding roads have led. I can see a day of gold ahead. It can't be done, impossible, they've said, but I'll get there. I'll get there. I will rise up. I will not fall. I will stand